My name is Isabel Morrison. Most people call me Belle. I'm 37 years old. 14 months ago, I hired a woman named Diane Fletcher to care for my mother, who has Alzheimer's disease. Diane had 15 years of experience, glowing references, and a warmth that made me believe my mom would be safe. I installed security cameras in my mother's house in June 2023, not to spy on Diane, to protect my mom. In case she wandered, in case she fell, in case something went wrong and I wasn't there. I told Diane about the cameras on the day I installed them. She smiled and said, "That's smart. I'd do the same thing." Last month, I was in a hotel room in Seattle on a business trip, bored, scrolling through camera footage from the week before. I watched Diane walk into my mother's bedroom, open the jewelry box on the dresser, and slip my mother's wedding ring into her pocket. I rewound the footage, kept watching. What I found over the next 8 hours made me physically sick. 14 months of theft, $9,200 stolen from my mother, jewelry, cash, forged checks, credit card fraud, and worse than the money, the verbal abuse, the cruelty. The way Diane spoke to my mother when she thought no one was watching. On August 27, 2024, at 9:00 a.m., 2 detectives knocked on my mother's door, Diane answered. They arrested her in the living room while my mother sat on the couch, confused, asking me why the police were taking her friend away. Diane looked at me and said, "You can't prove anything." I held up my phone and showed her a clip. 14 months of footage. Every theft, every lie. Her face went white. If this story resonates, subscribe now. Drop your location and the time where you are in the comments. Now let me take you back to March 2023, when my mother forgot my name for the first time. My mother's name is Margaret Morrison. Everyone calls her Maggie. She's 68 years old. She was a librarian for 30 years at the Boise Public Library downtown, the kind of woman who remembered every patron's favorite genre and could recommend a book after 2 questions. She raised me by herself after my father died of a heart attack in 2015. She was sharp, funny, independent. In February 2023, she started forgetting things. Small things at first. Where she put her keys. What day it was. She'd call me twice in one evening asking the same question, not remembering we'd already talked. I told myself it was normal. She was 68. People forget things. Then in early March, I stopped by her house after work. She was in the kitchen making tea. She looked at me, smiled, and said, "Can I help you?" I laughed. "Mom, it's me." She tilted her head, studying my face. "I'm sorry, do I know you?" My stomach dropped. "Mom, I'm Belle." "Your daughter," she blinked. Then something shifted in her eyes, recognition, relief. "Oh, Belle! Of course, I don't know what I was thinking." She laughed it off, but I saw the fear underneath. I made an appointment with her doctor the next day. Dr. Patricia Okoye is a neurologist at St. Luke's Health System in Boise. She's in her early 50s, calm, direct, the kind of doctor who doesn't sugarcoat. She ran tests, memory assessments, brain scans. On March 22, 2023, she sat my mother and me down in her office and said 5 words that changed everything. "Margaret, you have Alzheimer's disease." My mother stared at her. "That's not possible. I'm only 68. Early onset Alzheimer's can occur in people under 65. Your scans show markers consistent with stage 2 progression." "What does that mean?" I asked. "It means her memory will continue to decline. She'll need increasing levels of care. Eventually, she won't be able to live alone safely." My mother's hands were shaking. I held them. "How long until—" I couldn't finish the sentence. "It's different for everyone. But based on her current progression, I'd estimate she has 2 to 3 years before she'll need full-time care. Right now, she's at the stage where she shouldn't be driving, shouldn't be managing finances, and shouldn't be alone for extended periods." I took a leave of absence from work, stayed with my mother for 2 weeks, watched her forget simple things, the name of her street, how to use the microwave, where the bathroom was in the house she'd lived in for 20 years. One night, I woke up at 2 a.m. to find her standing in the backyard in her nightgown, barefoot, staring at the fence. "Mom, what are you doing?" "I'm waiting for the bus." "There's no bus, Moms. You're at home. Let's go inside." She looked at me, confused. "Who are you?" That's when I knew. She couldn't live alone anymore. I'm a pharmaceutical sales rep for a company based in Boise. I travel 2 to 3 days a week, covering Idaho, Montana, and eastern Washington. My territory is 200,000 square miles. I can't be home every day. I looked into memory care facilities. The good ones cost $7,000 to $9,000 a month. My mother's savings wouldn't last 2 years at that rate. So I decided to hire a live-in caregiver. I went through an agency called Golden Years Care. They'd been in business for 12 years, had good reviews online, and specialized in Alzheimer's and dementia care. The agency sent me 3 candidates. I interviewed all of them. Diane Fletcher was the third. She was 52 years old, average height, graying hair pulled into a neat bun, kind eyes. She had a resume that listed 15 years of experience in senior care, CPR certification, and references from 3 families she'd worked for previously. We sat in my mother's living room for the interview. Diane was warm but professional. She asked about my mother's condition, her routines, her preferences. Does she have favorite foods, music she likes, activities that calm her when she's agitated? I was impressed. The other 2 candidates had asked about pay and time off first. She loves old movies, I said, especially musicals. And she used to garden. She can't do much anymore, but she likes being outside, Diane smiled. We can work with that. I find that routines are important. Familiar things. It helps them feel safe. What's your experience with Alzheimer's specifically? I've worked with 6 families over the years. Alzheimer's, dementia, a few stroke patients. It's hard work, but it's meaningful. These people deserve dignity. They deserve kindness. Just because they're forgetting doesn't mean we should forget them. I hired her on the spot. Diane moved into my mother's house on June 1, 2023. She took the spare bedroom, the one that used to be mine. The arrangement was $4,200 a month plus room and board. She'd have weekends off, and I'd stay with my mother then. The first 2 weeks were seamless. Diane cooked meals, helped my mother bathe and dress, took her for walks around the neighborhood. She was patient, gentle, everything I'd hoped for. On June 15th, I installed security cameras. I bought 3 Nest indoor cameras from Best Buy. 1 for the living room, 1 for the kitchen, 1 in the hallway near the bedrooms. I set them up to record continuously, with cloud storage so I could access footage from my phone. I wasn't spying on Diane. I was protecting my mother. Alzheimer's makes patients wander. They fall. They forget where they are and panic. I needed to be able to check in when I was traveling. I needed to know my mother was safe. That evening, I showed Diane the cameras. I installed these today. They're for my mom's safety. If she wanders at night or falls, I'll get an alert. Diane nodded. That's smart. I'd do the same thing if it were my mother. You're okay with being on camera? Absolutely. I understand completely. Your mom's safety comes first. I felt relieved. Diane wasn't defensive. She wasn't uncomfortable. She got it. Over the next few months, I checked the cameras occasionally, mostly just to see how my mother was doing. I'd pull up the app on my phone during lunch breaks, watch Diane and my mom sitting together on the couch, watching TV, eating meals. Everything seemed fine. I traveled to Spokane in July, Missoula in August, Portland in September. Each time I left, I'd check the cameras once or twice, see that my mother was safe, and go about my work. By October 2023, I'd stopped checking the cameras regularly. I trusted Diane. My mother seemed happy. The arrangement was working. I didn't look at the footage again for months. That was my mistake. August 20th, 2024. I was in Seattle for a pharmaceutical conference. 3-day trip. I'd been in meetings all day, presentations about new drug protocols, networking events. By 9 p.m., I was back in my hotel room, exhausted, lying in bed scrolling through my phone. I opened the Nest app. I don't know why. Boredom, maybe. Habit. I just wanted to see my mom. The live feed showed the living room. Empty. It was late. They were probably asleep. I scrolled back through the day's footage, saw my mother eating breakfast, Diane helping her with her medication. Normal things. Then I saw something that made me pause. Diane walking into my mother's bedroom. My mother wasn't in the room. Diane went to the dresser, opened the jewelry box, pulled out a ring, my mother's wedding ring. Diane held it up to the light. Then she slipped it into her pocket. I sat up in bed, rewound the footage, watched it again. Diane, taking my mother's wedding ring, pocketing it, walking out of the room. I felt my chest tighten. I scrolled back further, August 19th, August 18th, August 15th. I saw Diane in the kitchen, opening my mother's purse, taking cash. I saw Diane in the hallway, talking on her phone. She doesn't even remember her own name. This is easy. I saw Diane at the kitchen table, signing a check. My mother's checkbook, Diane forging my mother's signature. I kept watching. August 10th, Diane taking a gold necklace from my mother's jewelry box. July 22nd, Diane at my mother's computer, using her credit card to shop online. June 30th, Diane yelling at my mother. You already asked me that. Stop asking the same question. I watched for 8 hours straight. I didn't sleep. I scrolled through 14 months of footage, and I saw it all. The theft, the lies, the cruelty. By 5 a.m., I'd downloaded 47 clips. Every instance of theft I could find. Every forged check. Every cruel word. I called my best friend Sarah at 6 a.m. Belle? What's wrong? Diane has been stealing from my mother. What? I have it on camera. 14 months of footage. She's been taking jewelry, forging checks, using Mom's credit card. Sarah, let's let this woman into my mother's home. Where are you? Seattle. Get home, now. I'm calling the police. I booked the first flight out. Left Seattle at 8 a.m. Landed in Boise at 10:30 a.m. I didn't go to my mother's house. I went to the Boise Police Department. Detective Marcus Webb works in the Elder Abuse Unit. He's 44 years old, 20 years on the force, and the first thing he said when I walked into his office was, "I've seen this before." Seen what? Caregivers who prey on Alzheimer's patients. They know the victims can't testify, can't remember, can't fight back. It's one of the worst kinds of theft, because the people being stolen from don't even know it's happening. I showed him the footage, all 47 clips. He watched in silence, then he looked up. How much do you think she took? I don't know. I need to go through bank statements. But from what I can see, it's tens of thousands. Do you have access to your mother's accounts? I'm her power of attorney. I have access to everything. Get me the records, bank statements, credit card statements, jewelry appraisals if you have them. I'll start building a case. I spent the next 4 days gathering evidence. I went to my mother's bank, pulled every statement from June 2023 to August 2024. Found 14 forged checks, all made out to cash totaling $23,000. I called the credit card company. Found $12,000 in unauthorized charges. Amazon, Target, clothing websites, all shipped to an address that wasn't my mother's house. I went to a jewelry appraiser, Robert Hastings, who'd appraised my mother's jewelry for insurance years ago. I gave him the list of missing items. Wedding ring, $8,000. Grandmother's gold necklace, $12,000. Diamond earrings, $18,000. Gold bracelet, $5,000. Various other pieces, $4,000 to $47,000. I added it up. Jewelry, $47,000. Forged checks, $23,000. Credit card fraud, $12,000. Cash taken from purse, estimated, $8,200. 90,200 stolen over 14 months. I gave everything to Detective Webb. On August 26th, he called me. We have enough for an arrest warrant. Grand theft, elder financial abuse, forgery, fraud. When do you want us to move? Tomorrow morning, 9 a.m. I want to be there. You sure? I'm sure. August 27th, 2024. I drove to my mother's house at 8:45 a.m. Parked down the street, waited. At 9 a.m., 2 unmarked police cars pulled up. Detective Webb and 3 other officers. I got out of my car, walked up to the house with them. Detective Webb knocked. Diane opened the door. She was wearing an apron, smiling. Can I help you? Diane Fletcher? Yes? I'm Detective Webb, Boise Police Department. We have a warrant for your arrest. Her smile faltered. Then she saw me standing behind the detectives. Belle? I didn't say anything. What's going on? Detective Webb pulled out the warrant. You're being charged with elder financial abuse, grand theft, forgery, and fraud. You have the right to remain silent. This is ridiculous. I haven't done anything. Ma'am, turn around. Hands behind your back. Diane looked at me. Belle, tell them. Tell them this is a mistake. You stole my mother's wedding ring, I said. My voice was calm. Too calm. You forged her name on 14 checks. You took $90,000 from her over 14 months. And I have every second of it on camera. Her face drained of color. You can't prove. I pulled out my phone, showed her a clip. Diane in my mother's bedroom taking the wedding ring. I have 47 clips like this. Every theft, every lie. 14 months of footage. She didn't say anything. Just stared at the screen. The officers handcuffed her. Walked her to the car. My mother was sitting on the couch, watching. She looked at me, confused. Belle, why are the police taking Diane away? I knelt in front of her. It's okay, Mom. She has to go now. But who's going to help me? I will. I'm here. Who are you? I held her hands. I'm Belle. Your daughter. Oh, she smiled. That's a pretty name. Detective Webb's investigation didn't stop with Diane's arrest. Over the next 2 weeks, they uncovered a pattern. Diane Fletcher wasn't a first-time offender. Her real name was Diane Fletcher, but her credentials were fake. The 15 years of experience? Fabricated. The CPR certification? Forged. The references? People who didn't exist. She'd worked for 4 other families in the past 6 years, all elderly. all with dementia or Alzheimer's. Family in Nampa, Idaho, $38,000 stolen, 2019. Family in Twin Falls, Idaho, $52,000 stolen, 2019-2020. Family in Meridian, Idaho, $71,000 stolen, 2020-2022. Family in Eagle, Idaho, $89,000 taken, 2022-2023. Total across all 5 families, including my mother, $340,200. None of the other families had pressed charges. Detective Webb contacted them, asked why. One woman said, "I was embarrassed. I didn't want people to know I'd been stupid enough to let her into my mother's house." Another said, "We didn't have proof. It was her word against ours, and our father couldn't testify. He didn't remember." That's what Diane had counted on. Victims who couldn't fight back, families too ashamed or too exhausted to pursue justice. My camera footage was the first concrete evidence anyone had. The prosecutor assigned to the case was Amy Chen, a deputy district attorney with Ada County. She was 39, sharp, relentless. She called me in September. "We're charging Diane with multiple counts across all 5 families. But your case is the strongest. We have video evidence. We have bank records. We have everything. If she goes to trial, you'll need to testify." "I'll testify." "It's not easy. Defense attorneys will try to make you look negligent. They'll ask why you didn't notice sooner. They'll imply you're exaggerating. I don't care. She stole from my mother, she abused her, and she did it to 4 other families. She needs to go to prison. Then let's make sure she does." In October 2024, Diane was formally charged. Elder financial abuse, 5 counts, 1 per family. Grand theft, 5 counts. Forgery, 14 counts for the checks alone. Fraud, multiple counts for credit card use. Her public defender offered a plea deal. Diane refused. She wanted to go to trial. The trial started January 14, 2025. I sat in the courtroom every day, front row, watching. Diane's defense was predictable. My client worked hard for these families. She cared for vulnerable people. If gifts were given, that was out of gratitude, not theft. Amy Chen destroyed that argument in her opening statement. "Ladies and gentlemen of the jury, Margaret Morrison has Alzheimer's disease. She doesn't remember her daughter's name. She doesn't remember where she lives. She cannot consent to giving away $90,000 in jewelry, cash, and forged checks. And we have 14 months of video footage showing the defendant systematically stealing from her." The footage was played in court. The jury watched Diane take the wedding ring. They watched her forge checks. They watched her yell at my mother. They watched her on the phone saying she doesn't even remember her own name. This is easy. I testified on day 3. Amy Chen asked me to walk through the timeline. When I hired Diane, when I installed the cameras, when I discovered the theft. "Why did you install cameras?" "To protect my mother. In case she fell, in case she wandered. I needed to know she was safe when I wasn't there." "Did you tell the defendant about the cameras?" "Yes, on the day I installed them. I told her they were for my mother's safety. She said she understood. She said she'd do the same thing, and yet she stole anyway." "Yes." Diane's attorney cross-examined Memes. "Morrison, you traveled frequently for work, correct?" "Yes." 2 to 3 days a week?" "Yes. So you weren't home to supervise your 4 mothers. That's why I hired a caregiver." "A caregiver you trusted?" "Yes. Until I realized I shouldn't have." "You didn't notice $90,000 missing for over a year. Doesn't that suggest a certain level of negligence on your part?" I looked at him. "I trusted someone I shouldn't have. That's not negligence. That's betrayal." Dr. Patricia Okoye, my mother's neurologist, testified on day 4. Amy Chen asked her, "In your professional opinion, could Margaret Morrison consent to giving away jewelry, signing checks, or authorizing credit card purchases?" "No, absolutely not. At her stage of Alzheimer's, she lacks the cognitive capacity to make those decisions. She doesn't remember what she owns. She doesn't understand financial transactions. Any signature on a check would have to be either forged or obtained under circumstances where she didn't understand what she was signing. So if the defendant claims these were gifts, they couldn't be. Margaret Morrison cannot give informed consent." The trial lasted 8 days. On January 23, 2025, the jury deliberated for 4 hours. They returned with a verdict, guilty, on all counts. Diane's face didn't change. She just stared straight ahead. The judge scheduled sentencing for February 7th. Sentencing day. I sat in the same front row seat. Sarah was with me. My mother was not. She doesn't remember any of this. She doesn't remember Diane. She asked me last week who the nice lady was who used to make her tea. The judge read the sentence. Diane Fletcher, you have been found guilty of elder financial abuse, grand theft, forgery, and fraud. You targeted vulnerable individuals who could not defend themselves. You exploited their trust and their family's trust. This court sentences you to 18 years in the Idaho State Correctional Institution. You are ordered to pay full restitution in the amount of $340,200 to the victims across all 5 cases. 18 years. Diane will be 70 years old when she's released. After the sentencing, Amy Chen walked over to me. Your camera footage made this case. Without it, we'd have had circumstantial evidence at best. You gave us everything we needed. I just wish I'd caught it sooner. You caught it. That's what matters. And because of you, 4 other families finally got justice. I drove to my mother's house that afternoon. She has a new caregiver now. Her name is Patricia. She's 61, bonded, insured, thoroughly vetted through a different agency. I installed 2 additional cameras, 5 total now. I check them every day. My mother was in the living room when I arrived, watching The Sound of Music, her favorite. I sat down next to her. Hi, Mom. She looked at me, smiled. Huss. Hello, dear. Do I know you? I'm Belle, your daughter. Oh, how lovely. I've always liked that name. Me too. We watched the movie together. She hummed along to Do Re Mi, forgetting the words but remembering the melody. Halfway through, she turned to me. Have we met before? Yes, Mom. We've met before. You seem nice. You're nice too. She patted my hand and went back to the movie. That's the thing about Alzheimer's. My mother doesn't remember Diane, doesn't remember being stolen from, doesn't remember the trial. In some ways, that's a mercy. She's not carrying the weight of betrayal. But I remember. I remember trusting someone I shouldn't have. I remember the sick feeling in my stomach when I saw that first clip of Diane pocketing the wedding ring. I remember 14 months of footage showing a woman I'd welcomed into my mother's home systematically stealing from her. And I remember the moment I realized that if I hadn't installed those cameras, Diane would still be there, still stealing, still getting away with it. The cameras weren't an invasion of privacy. They were a record of truth. And that truth put a predator in prison. 3 weeks ago, I received a letter from one of the other families Diane had stolen from, the woman in Nampa. Dear Ms. Morrison, I never thought I'd get justice for what happened to my father. When Diane stole from him, I blamed myself. I thought I should have noticed. I thought people would judge me for being careless. So I stayed silent. But you didn't stay silent. You had evidence and you used it. Because of you, my father's case was reopened. Because of you, Diane Fletcher is in prison. Thank you for being brave enough to fight. I read that letter 3 times. Then I folded it and put it in a drawer. I didn't fight because I was brave. I fought because I had cameras. And the cameras showed me the truth. My mother's name is Maggie. She's 68 years old. She has Alzheimer's. She doesn't remember my name most days. She doesn't remember the woman who stole from her. But I remember. And I made sure Diane Fletcher will remember too. For the next 18 years. If you've ever hired someone to care for a loved one, install cameras. Not to spy. To protect. To record. To have evidence if something goes wrong. Because trust is important. But proof is everything. Have you ever trusted someone who betrayed you? Or caught someone stealing through surveillance? Tell me in the comments. And if you've ever used technology to protect someone you love, drop a below. Subscribe for more stories like this. Next week, I'm sharing a story about a woman whose family demanded she be her sister's surrogate. What happened when she read page 4 of the contract is something they never saw coming. See you then.